How's things? I'm Patrick Kirk and you're watching the Training 1-to-1 podcast.
Why'd you clap 4 times?
Did you miss your hand? One of those. That's the problem, yeah. I actually did. I missed the second one. I was like, that didn't sound loud enough, so I wanted to go palm on palm action.
Oh, okay. We got to get him out and sub you back in, Morgan, behind the camera. But here we are. It's another Training 1-to-1 podcast episode. That was such a strange note to start it on, Gary.
We'll keep the clip in it, because we never do.
With your attitude over the last 5 minutes of your giggles, this is just absolutely ridiculous. So, as an intro, as you've probably seen, he starts laughing. We have Shane Lauritsch here today. Welcome, Shane. Little round of applause.
Thank you, boys.
Little round of applause.
Good to have you.
Shane is a coach with us at Training 1-to-1. I think you've been with us for like 4 months. I'd say 4 months.
Before. When did we go thing in April, wasn't it? And it would have been after he'd done sessions. Yeah. During the summer. It's probably like June, when you came to South.
4 months. Well, there you have it. Shane is going to join us on the topic today, which was given to us by a parent a few weeks ago, which is something that we've wanted to talk about, and now I think it's kind of brought us to the point where it is time to talk about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to discuss what are best practices to run a underage academy at a community club, as well as structuring your 7-a-side teams and your 9-a-side teams. So this is purely based on community club football, so it's not considered, let's say, anywhere near the National League or, let's say, high-performing academies, like Category 1 academies in the UK. This is purely community football with inclusion and participation and enjoyment being the most important things. Do you want to kick us off, Gary, with some facts and figures?
Yeah, I think the big thing for this is to kind of realise that this is probably like 90% of the players we deal with will be in this kind of schoolboy setting, or grassroots club, should I say. And just some stuff on that. So, like, this is from the FAI's Strategic Report 2022 to 25. I think it was released earlier this year. There's over 1,000 grassroots clubs, so 1,186. Over 75 leagues, 39 of which offer women or girls football, and that's over 220,000 registered players, and that includes male, female players, and football for all programs. And then with that, 80,000 volunteers, and then for example, in terms of coach education, 11,400 coaches participating in 475 planned courses since 2016. That's obviously a lot of coaches as well. So just that kind of base gives you how broad the schoolboy game is, which is kind of why we want to give some practical solutions, I suppose, the best way to talk about it, because we're quite lucky in our facilities and when we get to do the stuff in the off season with the pros where we could have a full 11-side pitch between 7 or 8 of us, including coaches and players. So that's obviously best case scenario, whereas a lot of people operate, obviously, like we know from being in schoolboy football, in quarter of pitch, or you're moving to half the pitches and whatnot. So yeah,
just for context as well, I think it's important to remember that this is something that I know myself and you, Gary, have experience in running underage academies. So when me and Gary were younger, we used to run an academy. So when I say an academy, I mean from, let's say, 4 years of age to 8 years of age. I had a 7-a-side team for 2 years, and I also had a 9-a-side team. So the only experience that I don't have properly was the transition period between academy football and 7-a-side. So I think, if it's not mistaken, in Ireland, it's still currently 5-a-side football is the bridge. But there is still some best practices that I've seen, even working with Training 1-to-1, that would work really well. Shane, where's most of your coaching experience so far?
Would probably be in DDSL and kind of grassroots level would be 9-a-side and 11-a-side, a little bit of 7-a-side as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, be kind of mixed across that. So
yeah, I think even just with Shane being here as well, it just has a good second opinion, because I find sometimes even with me and you, we share a lot of like similarities. I know obviously Shane, me and you share a lot of similarities as well, but
could be for the coach together. Most, like, any 7 or 9-side work I would have done would have been with you.
Yeah,
or I actually didn't coach 7-side. I only coached nursery stuff, like you said, academies, and 9-side we were in Stella, and then obviously 11-side. So
so yeah, I think it's a wide range of different experiences, which would be great to kick on. So I think we'll go and dive straight into it. So the main area that we're going to focus on is the academy structure. So from 4 years of age to 8 years of age primarily. So the biggest challenges that we noted before talking about this live, so in the note stages, was when teams are working in the academy settings, space is definitely an issue. So working in an area where you might be limited to having 40 to 50 players on half an astro, for example, and then you're trying to divide that astro into micro groups for then parents or coaches to basically be in charge of like those micro groups. And that kind of leads to the second point as well, where one of the main problems is that it's parents as coaches. So you don't have qualified coaches. You actually have parents that are looking to obviously give their child the best experience in football. It's better than not being involved, in the sense that the player wouldn't have a team to play with or participate in. So it's parents doing the role of coaches. And then the third thing, and it kind of leads on from the parents as coaches, is that there's no curriculum or there's no general hierarchy. So it's difficult to bring issues to certain people if people are unsure of anything along those lines, of how to communicate back and forth with best practices. We're just trying to give some light really on those three main challenges. But there is a couple of other things that we're going to touch on as like best practices, and I'm sure we'll think of things as we're going through. So do you want to kick in there, Gary?
I actually think, interesting, I mean, the minute you talked about it, I straight away thought back to the podcast yesterday you was done with Shane, and one of the big things when you asked him about what has been successful for him and in his environments, has actually been staff. And I think first of all, straight away, is getting as many coaches as you can, even if it means you have 20 coaches, you just put them on a rota. So rather than being there every week, they do maybe every second or third week. And with that, you bring down the ratio of player to coach. So like at them ages, I'm thinking max I would give a coach will be like 10 players. Absolute max. You'd even try maybe keep it lower. And you can be clever with how you get coaches in. Like you mentioned before about TY students and using the gosh really kind of thing. And you don't know what you're going to get from that, in terms of you might get lads who really want to coach and you end up with an under-8 manager going forward. Yeah. So I think things like that with getting young people in, and obviously parents build up. You're better having, rather than having 6 to 8 coaches who are out there every week, you're better having 20, and they do every second week. So they're not as they might, like for example, some Fridays, let's say, or whatever day you're doing, they might be, I can't do this week. It's like, grand, we have Gary to come in anyway. So you just have this big list, and that way you've so much cover that you're not ending up in a case where it's one unexperienced coach with 16, 20 players, because they're so difficult to manage at that age, and the quality of the session is going to drop. So that would be the big thing I would say straight away, is getting as many staff, so to speak, as you can.
Human resources.
Yeah, exactly. So TY students, parents, that kind of thing.
And if you're a bigger club, you can reach out. If you've got an under 16s or under 17s there, it can be good for them to come down. Even if you, like you said, you had a rota, if you've 3 or 4, the 2 clubs, kind of community clubs I've been in, are big. They both would have over 1,000 kids. So there's a lot of resources higher up, and it's good, because I think the main thing when you're like, academies are nuts. You know, when you go down to an academy and when you're taking sessions, it's wild. And you need people, I think, with good energy. That's the most important thing. And then you can coach them to be good coaches and give them a curriculum. But you need to have the energy to deal with kids that age, and you need to enjoy it. You have to be going out and enjoying it and being positive, because it's so important, because it's such a mix of personalities, kids, ability, everything is mixed. And if you've someone really good, and even if they don't, I think I don't know about you guys, I would prioritize someone with good energy and personality and wanting to learn rather than experience. Especially at that level. I don't think I'd put as much emphasis on it for especially when you're dealing with that age, because you're kind of a young coach who wants to learn. They're going to have a good rapport with the kids. They'll have energy, and they'll be coming to you, and they'll have that. And it's the most important thing. I think it's just energy for those sessions.
The big thing to remember is what's the goal of an academy? The goal of an academy is to bring young players in to start their football journey, and they're not going to. The kids are very black and white. They either enjoy it or will not enjoy it. They're not there to be pros or anything like that. You have to get players back. So I would say definitely on the human resources side, you need to have plenty of them, because you want to have, like, if you are constantly having a week on, week off, when you are there for your week on, you are fully there, fully present. And as you said, Shane, you're going to need specific energy to deal with younger kids. And I think it's important to note as well on the human resources side with under 16s and under 17s players, that's how me and Gary started. We started as older players looking to coach and get into it. And I was always told when I started doing my coaching badges was that it's always better to start with the younger kids and then move up, because everything else becomes easier. It's much more difficult to start with older kids and go backwards. You develop much better habits. And even like if I look to where I'm coaching now and how I set up sessions, I'm always ready to take younger kids because of the foundation that I've had, which is absolutely vital. And let's say, for example, you do have issues with human recruitment. Do you have any advice on how you would attract under 16s and under 17s players to coaching?
So if you don't have them in a team in your club, let's say.
Well, even at the moment, I'd say most community teams do have an under 16s to an under 18s team, typically. How do you go about attracting? Because now I know me and you put our foot forward to coach, but what about if people are unsure? What would be your best advice there?
Try it. Is the best thing. Like if 20 of them try it and 4 or 5 of them want to do it.
Safety in numbers, just say we're doing this as a team. Because it's good for the team as well. It's good, like, you know, it's really good. It's team bonding, and it's good for them to put themselves into those situations also. So that'll help them develop. They'll get stuff out of it as well. But I think if you just assign a team and say, we're just going out there, boys, Sunday morning, whatever you do your academy, and say, we're going to go down as a team, do it, have a bit of a laugh off it, see, do we enjoy it? And then that, again, when we're talking about their kind of positivity as a team, the kids will enjoy that because the lads will be bouncing off, or the girls will be bouncing off each other, same thing, and then it'll just raise the whole kind of, and it's nice for the club as well when you see that the kind of the next gen, I don't want to sound like the oldest man in the world, the next generation, but the older kids in the club giving back, because it's important for them to realise that when they were that age, someone did the same for them. So you're kind of you're getting two positives out of that.
I'm being clever with when you do have them young coaches and you can get them in. Let's say you have 4 or 5 of them. Don't just split them all up. Maybe you always pair them up. Because I actually probably only really got into coaching because I was doing it with you. If someone pulled me in and said, like the first team we worked at Minute and went, oh, Gary's taking that team, so you go take another team. I'd be like, I want to coach Gary. Like that would have been my mindset at the time. Yeah. So that's gonna be helpful too. Where if you know 2 of them are pally, keep them together. And if one of them's a really good coach, you might bring the other one along with them, and you end up with 2 really good coaches. And just one thing you said on having someone who heads the academy in the sense of there has to be a face that parents can go to if there's ever issues. So there should be somebody delegated as, whether it's the academy director or like a, what would you call it, like a player liaison kind of person, or welfare, whatever you want to call the role, where they're there on the nights and not on the pitch coaching, so to speak, but they're just there, they're a face to talk to any issues, to come and deal with whatever it might be. I think, like again, Shane talked about it yesterday, having clear guidelines in that sense that if there's a problem, you go to Gary, for example, and they're the liaison person, so to speak. And just like that, naming that role when you start the academy and making it like a process, so to speak, that they're always there.
Big time. And I think that kind of alludes into like, what is that head coach role? What is that responsibility? And I think one thing that head coach can do to really attract coaches is to host academy tournaments. One of the fondest memories I have of coaching wasn't even coaching. It was taking, so Minute done this really well. They done a Summer World Cup, right, where there was like 3 or 4 different age groups. All of the teams are put into mixed teams. So they were like, you'd have a couple of older players, a couple of younger players. And Morgan was playing in it. But Morgan was outside of Minute. He was at Home Farm at the time. So Morgan was playing in that. And then some of his other mates and stuff. And then I was like, oh, I'd love to take a team in this. Be great crack. And having that competitive spirit was unbelievable for me coaching. I absolutely loved it.
We coached against each other.
Oh, it was brilliant.
Yeah,
Who won?
He smoked me.
Well, now come here. I had Morgan on my team, and I had, in my opinion, the best schoolboy player I've ever seen, which is Owen Donald, in the same team, and we still lost. So that just shows what my managerial capability was like.
On a side note of that, do you ever go to like mini World Cups and stuff, and you see coaches on the sideline losing the rag?
Yeah, it's very fun.
They're like, yeah, look, we're Brazil, we can't lose to Scotland.
I tell you what, though, man, that is what makes it though for younger teenagers like 16, 17. It's half the fun. But as you're saying, man, imagine if you said, okay, the 17s and 18s are going to have there's going to be 3 in a managerial team. You're going to have this team. You've got a week to coach them, and you got a tournament on the Sunday. That's a great way to get players.
That is very clever way doing it.
Like that, the camaraderie there.
How many teams are in the mini World Cups usually? Like from your experience in the clubs you've been in?
Oh, they're massive.
They're massive.
How many, is that across what age groups is that, like under?
Probably like under 6, under 7, up to under 13 is when they stop. Maybe 14s depending.
Yeah, so like you said, it'd be great to if you go to your 16s, 17s, 18s and go put a coaching team together and go take a team, like
be a part of it. Yeah,
and even on the academy days, I think, and this is interesting to hear your thoughts on it. You know, that kind of carousel where you have stations. I think that's easier for coaches to come into. So if you have 2 younger coaches and say, you 2 boys, you're like, you 2 Garys, you're on 2v2s today. It's 10 minutes, and then that team rotates out, and another team will rotate in. You have the 4 stations set up.
We always just do that.
Yeah, because I think you're a little bit more confident in what you're coaching then. Because instead of having to learn everything, you just have to it's better for the kids because you're just focusing on one thing, and then it's a little bit easier because you just go, okay, I just have to do 2v2s. I don't need to learn 2v2s and tech and games and keep moving.
And you get better. It's funny if you do a new drill and you're like, right, the first time you do it with the first group, you struggle a little bit, and then you're like, right, I know what not to do with the next group.
And you get that confidence from getting better at doing it.
Big time. And that brings us to like the next part of it. So let's say like we talked about recruiting people into your academy setup. We've talked about the importance of a head coach in their role in recruiting people, but also being the face and the liaison. But, you know, what actually is the structure of your hour? So let's take, for example, we've got 40 kids. We're working on half a pitch. Our ideal ratio is maximum 10. I would say probably 8 to 1 though. 8 players to one coach. So what is the ideal hour? So we typically work in the younger hours, train 1-to-1 with a method called play, practice, play. Is that something that you would advise for these age groups, or would you be more inclined to go stations wise with Shane?
If I had inexperienced coaches, I'd go station wise and just.
So what does that look like? So what does that look like from the moment you put down your cones to the moment that the session ends?
So say the easiest way to do it is probably 15-minute blocks. That's your hour. So someone takes a warm up, and for me, the warm up will be multi-directional dribbling kind of stuff. Everyone has a ball, again, whatever turns you want to work on, that kind of stuff for 15. Then I would probably say you go into some sort of 1v1 game would be a station. And then, you do 2 rotations. So you do your warm up, then you go into a 1v1 drill, then you might do a 2v2 drill, and then the last 15 will be like games, 3v3s, 4v4s. That'd be the probably max I'd go up to. So that would be repeat, I would say.
And they can start in the 3v3. Like they can start in the game and then they can move. They're going to do 2v2 and then 1v1.
Okay.
So you just move the group each time.
Yeah.
So it can be, so it doesn't have to be like small into bigger into bigger into bigger. It can just be, you take that station, you do it, and you get what. So some kids will be say getting they're straight into a game. Some will be straight into
dribbling warm up.
And even if like, and for kids as well, if they're not enjoying it, you can go those smaller blocks. If you do like 10 to 12 minutes, you got like it's only going to be 6-7 more minutes, and then you'll be doing dribbling and finishing if you've mini goals or you've something like that. So it's keeping their interest, because you're not going to get them in doing like tech development for 20 minutes. Like you're not going to get toe taps and stuff out of them for that long.
So what did you mean when you said warm up, Gary? Is just like a station, like a very simple station?
Again, I wouldn't always keep I would mix up. Sometimes you might go, right, this may be to develop the coaches, but what Shane said, if you had a full new group of coaches, I would probably do that. Just go, you go into one of them 4 stations, you move around, say like that. You could start in the 3v3, you could start in the dribbling, so to speak, move around, and then maybe as your coach get more comfortable, you go, right, rather than you doing the 2v2 game today, every group you're gonna warm up with the first group you get, so you'll get them in, and maybe everyone does a multi-directional warm up for 10 minutes or whatever. Then you go into whatever station you were meant to have, so that 2v2, and then you rotate them around so that every group has done that same warm up and rotate, and that way you're kind of building the coach. Go, right, well now I can take a warm up on a 1v1 practice.
And you're slowly adding.
All of a sudden you're following you keep the stations and you send the coaches around with the group and they're doing the full session then. So it's very simple when you have it set up like that to go, right, take your one group for 8 weeks, maybe get confident in it, right, now you do the warm up and that, and you push the group of kids on, and then you go, right, you start there, but you need to know all the other 3 exercises because you bring your group with you, and all of a sudden you're coaching a full hour session without really, like you said, you're just kind of adding steps to it, and you're becoming a better coach on the go, you know. So
in terms of your setup, is it a case where on that half a pitch there's just a station in each part of the astro half, and the players are moving like anti-clockwise? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And draw a map. Map is your best friend.
Yeah.
Map, page, phone, whatever, to show to the lads when they come up. Have your pitch, just have it segmented if you're doing 4 stations into that, 2v2s, whatever. Write it in each and say you'll be in this, because then lads will be setting up like the 2v2s where whatever's meant to be. And so just have it really simple. Like that's your prep is your best friend. Doesn't take too long.
That's for the coaches.
For the coaches, yeah.
Okay, we're talking here about like 2v2s. A 2v2 to us is like bread and butter. But what is a 2v2 game? How do you even run a 2v2 game?
Rectangle. Whatever type of goals you have at other end. So if you have minis, big, whatever you want. And typically what I do, and it's interesting, people set it up differently. 8 kids, let's say I put 2 in each corner. And obviously one end would be bib, let's say, and not use bibs, by the way. I've seen that a lot in academy sessions where they don't use bibs and all in 2v2s, which is, obviously if you have bibs, definitely use them. And again, be clever. I've honestly seen academy sessions where, let's say your group, you have 4 bibs on them and 4 bibs on them, and another group has no bibs and no bibs. Instead of like going, right, we'll go, rather than you going bibs against bibs, give one set of bibs there, so it's bibs, non-bibs, bibs. Honestly, I've seen that, like simple things like that where, right, you don't need every kid to have a bib, but you need one team to have a bib. And like that, I would go, so if you imagine this is your rectangle, you have 2, 2, 2, 2. When you call goal, run around your goal, come out and play 2v2. And that way you have like a half work, half rest, where there's 4 on the pitch working for whatever amount of time you want. If you want to maybe have them work for a full minute, I usually do by football, so I'll play a ball in. When that one goes dead, I'll give them a second ball because you're working on them reacting to things. And then when that goes dead, they run back to their line, and then the next 2 goals. You're getting like that half and half kind of work the rest.
Control is so important. I'm glad you talked about that, because I see a lot of people going to small-sided games with kids and it's just pandemonium. Balls flying everywhere, kids flying everywhere, kicks, like blood going everywhere. Sometimes like it's just mental.
An easy way as well for this, if you want to really control the session, is don't let the kids have the footballs in the lines. I've had this with coaches where even dribbling warm-ups, rather than going dribble, turn and pass to the next player, all the kids in the line have a football and they're just going to mess with it. Like, so again, as you get more comfortable, you might be more confident in the kids starting off the small side of the game where with a certain type of pass.
Yeah.
But for the moment, you keep the footballs, you get them in the corner, and you know the great thing about that 8 number is when the 4 on the pitch, they're allowed to stand that count, so they're not pushing and messing with anybody because there's nobody there. It's a cone for them to stand that. So just being clever with your lines in that sense.
That's extremely important. I think we talked a little bit about space, how to manage space, even with the diagrams, the importance of we didn't talk about curriculum, we'll get to that in a minute, but more so hierarchy, recruiting parents and coaches. But like that's kind of what I would call like a snag list thing about running academies. I've got a few other ones as well. I think we should talk about them, because that there is very important. Bibbing players, not making younger kids pass the ball. The last thing young players want to do is share. Like even with kids, even if you think back to any kid, they don't want to share their toys. You know what I mean? It's much easier to control a session and keep everybody safe when they each have something to focus on, which is the football. Another thing that I really see as wasting time is incorrect management of between exercises. So I think I always call it to the kids is just good housekeeping. So before you bring your kids to go get a drink, make sure they bring all the footballs in, and you always tell them like, don't kick them in, walk them in. And as soon as they put their football down, then they can go get a drink. Little things like that are very important.
It's interesting that if you, let's say your footballs are everywhere and you go, right, go get a drink, 3 of them get a drink. The other 5 are going to run around kicking footballs all over the place and annoying you. Yeah. You actually don't get a break from the session then. Whereas if you go, right, bring all the footballs in, a simple one is, and this is a great way to buy yourself time, make a triangle on the ground. If you need to move a cone around, it gives you 20-30 seconds. And then once they've done that, you go, right, go get a drink. And even if you're not getting a drink, go walk over anyway and have a chat if you want, and just send them away, because you do need that as a coach to go, right, they've walked over there 10 yards, or grabbing a drink. And to be honest, if they kind of chat, they'll stay there. They'd stay there for a couple of minutes if you wanted, but it's actually nice for you as a coach to be able to go, right, have a breather, settle yourself a little bit, and maybe move something if you need to. But definitely, like you said, don't tell them to get a drink and leave footballs all over the place. Get all the footballs in, bring them into wherever you want them, and then send them off.
And it's going to be chaotic. It's going to be, they're not senior players, they're not anything. There will be footballs everywhere. There will be kids who won't listen to what you're saying, and you can't if you get frustrated by that or kind of flummoxed by that, it's just going to slow you down. I think you're not doing a bad job if you go up there and it's a little bit chaotic and you're not running like military precision to the time, where some kids aren't as interested maybe as other kids, or that's fine. That's what it is. You're going up there, you're doing a good job. You're doing what you should be doing. Academies are chaos at that. They are. They're absolutely nuts. And you just need to know that it will be, and you just kind of trying your best while you're up there.
Yeah. But on that, for curriculum choice, okay, so I've seen coaches do exercises with kids where they spend 90% of the time trying to explain the exercise rather than picking the most basic, easiest exercise and focusing all their time and attention to the kids performing the exercise.
Yeah.
A big thing that I would say to people that are creating curriculums for academies, or even if it's parents with trying to plan sessions within a curriculum, is try to work on a set base of exercises that you understand really well, which are extremely easy, that you could explain to a person that doesn't understand football. And for example, today I had an under 6 group. We were working on dribbling, so focusing on big touches. And the aim was simply, I'm going to stand in a cone, every single player at the ball, like you said, dribble to that pole, turn and go to the gate. It had a clear entry point. You were able to coach the outside cut on the dribble, which we were working on, and I had a clear exit point. And I think it's very important to kids and to parents as well. Well, for kids, obviously for flow, parents for session organization, is that every single part of the drill needs to be explained. So when this kid reaches that orange gate, the next one's allowed go. You have to have clear entry points and exit points of exercises. And you need to be able to be in a position where if you need to focus on a kid for 30 seconds, that the other players can still do the exercise without your eyes having to go across every couple of minutes. So important.
Yeah. And what you say there, even that small detail, colors are so important, and or whatever way you're separating them out. But orange gate, white cones, whatever, that, like, as simple as you can make it, simplicity is your friend. The more simple it is, the more chance of success you're going to have, and the easier it is for people to understand.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. Color
Now,
gates.
I'm colorblind, so I would be.
Are you not?
Yeah, your man would be like dribble out to the red cone, and I'd be out the gate.
You're actually colorblind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
yeah.
I never
Proper.
Shane.
Full on.
Well, like, what's full up with?
Like, I have a mate, Dara's gonna hate this show, but Dara like can see, like, you'd look at something like that chair and he'd tell you it's a different colour than it is. Like, probably there's like certain, it's like orange and red he mixes up a lot.
I red green.
Is it red green? Oh, that's mad. I didn't know you're colourblind.
That's crazy.
There you go. Fact of the day.
Yeah, well,
There you
have
go.
it. But yeah, on the I can't believe that. Well, Gary, would you have a set curriculum? So kids need to be working on dribbling, kids need to be working on passing at that age, or to just simply play the game, be safe, do it in small sided games?
I think what you described is something I definitely overdone when I first coached in them age groups, academy football, where you'd be trying to think of, right, I want to do this kind of dribble, and he does this change, and he does X, Y, and Z. And then you nearly end up with, right, well, them two players are doing that dribble. There's, again, let's say we're working at group of 8, there's 6 players in total just standing in a line. So being more dynamic with it is definitely what I think, where, like I said, your warm-up is your dribbling, your kind of free move and dribbling, whatever it is you want to do, king of the ring, little games like that to keep them interested. And personally, for me, I would try go into your small, like the game. If you don't really know what you should coach, the game is your best friend, because the kids want to play 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s. It's the first thing they ask you when they come in. When are we playing games? So if you're ever in doubt over what you should do for a session, doing small sided games is going to benefit them anyway. And then just like that control and how much time they obviously get on the ball and whatnot. Like the only thing is, if you're doing more isolated practices, like you were saying there today, dribbling, turn, dribble through a gate, I'd give them a little carrot at the end of it, where when you do that outside cut, let's say, and you dribble through the gate, there's a mini goal you get to score into. And like Ryan O'Carroll actually does a lot of these really well in 1-to-1 with the little older ages, where he'll have two groups going, and every time he'll do like, right, there's a minute on the clock, how many goals can you get? And both groups and that makes them go quicker, because they're like, right, well, I've got to go and shoot to let my next mate go, because they're going quick and shooting. And I've seen you do it with your team, where you time passing patterns, don't you? I know it's a bit more complex, but
Quickest to like 40, 50, 60.
Yeah.
Ladder them up like that. Yeah.
so like that, just maybe something as simple as, rather than they just dribble and turn, dribble out, because again, the kids are like, they'll do it 4 or 5 times and they'll go, right, I'm going to start checking out now. Go, right, make it a bit competitive. Go, blues here, non-bibs here. Dribble. When you do your little change of direction, there's a mini goal you get to score into, and then we'll do 1 minute on the clock, who can score the most goals, which team or whatever. And that's kind of the only way I now would look at doing an isolated practice. I'd have some sort of shot or pass at the end of it. And then other than that, like I said, if in doubt, just 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s, them ages, and just give them as much. 3v3s can be tough because they kind of all gravitate towards the ball, but definitely 1v1s, 2v2s. And again, as you progress as a coach, they'll eventually even get bored of the one where they start in the corner, run around the goal and play. Be a bit different, where they maybe both start the same side and they run, touch the goal, and then you roll the ball out in front so that the attacker is getting the ball with the defender behind them. Whole different game. Because again, I think of 1v1s in a couple of ways, where you've got defender in front of you, where they're really tight and you actually don't have space to dribble, so you just have to do little body feints. When you've space to dribble, you can then dribble at them and use your speed with them at your back, so you're protecting the ball. So that's another way. Maybe they come from the side, and all these different things are so important, where you're not just doing 1v1 game. You're able to then go, right, well, for this week I want to work on one of the defenders behind them, and it's a whole different experience for them. And that's, again, the game at the end of the day is players come from here, there, and everywhere, and you're just exposing them to that in the game as much as possible.
Yeah, it's like a case where you're just giving players more exposure of the game, whereas I think with older players you can kind of talk about that situation more so, but they're doing the exact same thing, which is always very funny. So I think we've talked about a couple of the main problems there. We've given some practical advice. Is there anything else that you would address? I think, Shane, even before the podcast, you were talking about like what's in your coaching bag, like what's in your toolkit.
Did you say you made a mistake with this?
Oh, you should have seen my ladders, hurdles, you name it. It was in there, the full circuits. And now I think simplicity is your friend, and especially when you're coaching football. I think even before you take a step back to that, you need to know why you're coaching. Or for me, definitely what your aim is from a session. So it's always to develop players. It's not to, especially those age groups, develop players, and that's it. And if you take your joy, or you take your, like, if the reason you do it is develop players and see them get better, then you'll enjoy it. Whereas if you're coming down and looking for results or anything at that type of age, it's just gonna break your heart. And it's also, even when it's that kind of zero sum game, or like I remember a goalkeeper talking about it before, but they were saying their mindset couldn't be, I'm gonna get a clean sheet today, because he was like, if in the first minute someone absolutely pings a worldie, like what's he gonna do? Like just go, right, wait till next week. That's it. Yeah, see you later, boys. Like that's it. I'm done. So you can't have that kind of zero sum attitude to football, because it doesn't work that way. So for me, while you're coaching, what are you trying to do when you're down there? And simplicity, pair your drills back, pair your coaching kit back. So I have 2 sets of cones or 3 sets of cones: white, blue, yellow, white, blue, yellow, big cones, like big white cones, small white cones, big blue cones, small blue cones, big yellow cones, small yellow cones. And that's it. And I'll build everything without that. I'll build everything in the session with them, and I'll move from color to color. Obviously not red and green.
I was going to say those are very different colors.
Yeah.
Even small things like that, when you're lining out your pitch. So even if it was a case where, you know, for some academy structures, it's not a case where you can do stations. Let's say you have a group for an hour. Make sure you set up your pitch first. Set up your biggest grid first. Set everything else inside your pitch, and then start to peel back out. So when you're lining out your bigger pitch, use bigger cones, 4 corner cones, and even a small thing. These are
the colour's big for that, because I've done that before, where I've had, let's say, our orange discs on the big pitch.
Yeah.
But you also have that and something in the middle.
Yes.
You pick up the orange disc we were using, and you think they'll pick up the ones they were using.
Your
But
sessions-
you get
your
a
sessions
kid
out there, yeah.
just goes and runs to the far corner and picks up one. You're like,
Absolutely.
no, put it back, and then they don't know where it was. And
100%, man. But even like small things, like don't have too many pitches, or sorry, don't have too many cones on your pitch. So if you're setting up a pitch for the younger kids, I have the 4 corner cones, big white cones, and I use 2 discs on each touchline. Whereas back in the day, I used to have like a line of 4 big cones, line of 4 big cones.
I used to love that.
But kids used to kick lumps out of it. Like the ball hits it, cone's gone. Ball hits the next one, cone's gone. Then you get on the pitch, use flat discs for sidelines, use big cones for corners. It's way more, first of all, it looks aesthetic. Secondly, it's much easier to control the flow, and the grid lasts 3-4 times longer.
Yeah.
That's such a small thing, but people do not think about that, or nor should they think about that. That only really comes through experience.
Yeah.
I
I'm
find.
gone full discs over cones. I only use
They're
big
not great on grass, you see, that's the only
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah,
100%.
that is the problem. Yeah.
Absolutely.
that's true.
We're privileged with Astros.
Yeah.
Everything looks nice and clean.
So you're up there, especially on, say you're in 6th of an Astro, and this is what you're working on. If we move, say, from the academy and you're at 77, whatever. So exactly what you said, I would do the same thing when I'm in my 6th of Astro. I'd start with my passing patterns in the middle, and then you're lifting that, and then you're into small rondo, then you lift that, you're into a bigger rondo, then you lift that, you're into your game, coaching whatever you want, and then it's free play. And it's all set up, it's there, and you can do that in a 6th of an Astro. And again, you're going up with the mindset of, and I think it's a big thing, it's often overlooked, because it's really frustrating as a coach when you don't have a lot of space. And especially, like, I've had 6th of an Astro with under 17, under 18 teams, and the lads are like, if they come out of the 6th, they're probably going to trample an under 12 who's beside them, so you have to be really careful with that. But if you go up there frustrated and with the mindset that, oh, this space is crap, whatever, like, players can feel that. And I think straight away, go up there and go, and I know this sounds kind of like, but you need to change your mindset and go, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to make it work, and it's going to make me a better coach, that I can put on a really good session inside. This is going to challenge me as a coach to do that. Set up in your 6th of a pitch. And I think the biggest, like, for coaches and for me, my learnings were same thing when I bought all the cones, is you can't go up there with a session plan for 10 players, and the session only works with 10 players. That is the biggest learning as a coach. It has to be adaptable to 2 or 3 players, because someone's going to fall off their bike on the way up, someone's going to be sick, something's going to happen, older age group's going to need a player, something's going to happen where you're not going to have those numbers. So your passing patterns cannot be some mad intricate thing you've seen and you need 6 players exactly, and if it doesn't turn up, then you have to change them. It's your best passing patterns are 3-4 cones, 1 football or 2 footballs, and you can coach everything you need within that. Rondos learn the value of, what do you call them, neutrals, jokers,
Link player, yeah. Floater.
floater.
There's so many words.
I call it floater.
I'm neutral, so all my stuff. So I'd have my passing pattern, and that's adaptable to each one. Can have, say, between 4 and 6 players and not break down, and both of them will have that. Then I'll go into 4v2s, always some type of small rondos, or 3v1, 5v2 with a link man in the middle, whatever it is. And you can coach everything. Well, if you know what you want to coach, so sorry, even taking a step back, you need to know what you want to coach, and it can't be every week it needs to change. This would be my advice to, say, someone who's starting out with coaching and a parent, is that 6 weeks, I'm going to focus on technical development or moving the football or whatever you want. So in possession, in your 4v2, you can coach second angles. You can coach everything you need, back foot, front foot, one touch, two touch football. Everything you want to coach in 4v2 is there. And if you're working on defending, you can still keep your principles and stay in the 4v2 and just coach the two. Like working as a two, don't get split, pressure, cover. So you can keep the same, your sessions work and you just focus on different points as you do that. Then you move into, say, your bigger rondos. And again, that's set. So say if you're working on building through, or you can have rondo, man each end, neutral man each end. If a player pulls out, you can jump on an end line, easy to do. One neutral in the middle and teams just keep in possession. And now you're coaching a little bit more space, understanding of space, your angles, not blocking passing lines, thinking about if this man receives, where can I then move to give him a pass? You can coach that for months, beyond months. And then same thing if you're defending, same thing, but you're working on defenders. And now instead of 10 passes as a goal, you're stopping it going from one end to another, and you get a point if you intercept the ball, and then you go like that. So it's all adaptable, and but simplicity is key. And all you're looking at training in those small areas, all you need to think about is it simple, is it technically challenging, and is it the intensity good? If you have those three things, it's going to be a really good session.
100%. And I think context is important there. Like, that would be more so for older players and adaptability. And I suppose the adaptability part is all about even with the younger academies. But I think that kind of leads us on to what is the change really when you actually take a team out of that baby academy side into like 5-a-side football, 7-a-side football? What are the big changes that, let's say this is typically what community clubs do, if I'm not mistaken. So let's say there's a pool of parents and a pool of older players, 16 and 17-year-olds who are in charge of the academy teams. That pool of 40 players gets split into 3 teams. A, do you grade players? B, when the teams are separated, does anything change in terms of curriculum and choice?
I would be in favour of grading. I think for the simple reason that people want different things from football. You might get a group of kids who want to be professional, so to speak, or like are really into their football, and you might get people on the opposite scale who just love to come up and play, aren't even that competitive, they're just like kicking the ball around, and you've got to cater for that. If you mix the 3 teams and it's mixed, you're killing both of them players' experience. So I just don't think that's a valuable thing. Now, I think people would say is, I'm not a fan of when the A team's the A team and the B team's the B team, so to speak, where it's first and second, that mentality. I actually heard an interesting thing talking about, like bio banding and all, players playing, they don't want to use the word up and down in age group because that's what people traditionally say. In the UK, they're big on saying you play across the age groups, because sometimes people say, oh, you're playing down is a negative thing, where it's like, no, you're playing across the age group. So the team shouldn't be looked at as like 1, 2, 3. It should be like 1, 2, 3. It's like you're all on this kind of same continuum, and that fluidity between, like, if you have like a third team or fourth, whatever level it is, and they're really, really, we'll call it like real, how would you even say, like they just really want to be there for fun, like no interest in not in developing, but
like community team,
real community team. Yeah. Whereas your other 2 teams could be, there might be some players who are kind of between both levels and all. You've got to keep that channel open between them. It can't be a case where little Shane is on team 2 and he's never getting to team 1. Yeah. Even if he's a player who's maybe really, some people say, oh, he's too strong for team 2, but he's probably not good enough for team 1. There still has to be a channel there where players can bounce between both teams. Now, I don't know, I'd imagine that like when it's 5-a-side now, and even 7-a-side, that's all right. I don't know if a 9-a-side, does that become more with the leagues not being able to play down? I don't know. When it comes, maybe that's meant to
Premier. 7s you couldn't.
Yeah.
At 7-a-side?
Well, we couldn't bring up like a 10B1 player, for example.
Why is that?
Don't know. It was just your 10A registration, typically 10 players.
Yeah, you can't move within.
Sure, I remember
leagues. You can move. I think they've even changed that now. The DDSL, so you can't move. Like, say if it was Premier Major, Premier can't play Major, and Major can't play Premier. But if it was 13s, 12, Major could play Premier.
Okay. Right. Well, anyway, at the 5-a-side level, I would grade, and like that, I would keep the 2 teams. If they are of a similar enough level, I would keep it as fluid as possible between them. Like,
do you know what the toughest job in that is? The toughest coaching role in that is, if you have 3 teams, it's the middle coach. Because the top team, they're going to be kids who are probably pretty good or the best, say, players in that team. And then the third team will be the community team where they're there for enjoyment. But the second team coach, you're going to have, say you've 10 in your squad, if it's 7-a-side, you're going to have 3 or 4 who are really close to the age grew up and probably are motivated to try and get there. But you're going to have 3 or 4 who are close to the community team. And it's that balance of how to get put on a worthwhile session for all of those, because it's probably the biggest mix of ability and reasons for being there in either the team. So it's that middle coaching one that I've always found the most difficult.
And your probably best friend in that is more game-based stuff, I would say. Because at least if they're playing games, they're going to enjoy it no matter what they're in the game for.
Yeah,
Whereas
man.
you might say with your top team, so to speak, you might be able to, if they're coachable, you might be able to actually start introducing certain concepts that would be lost on some of the players on that second team. So it's all, and there's funny, like there's these kids you'll get into sessions that we've had about 1-to-1. You'd be thinking after, and someone would look at that kid and go, he is now interested in football. And in 6 months' time, they can be complete. Like, we have players who've been in with us for a while, and I remember some of them when they were younger, I was like, geez, he's mad. He just doesn't seem to have any interest in football. And then like that, 6 to 8 months later, he's the best player in the group. Like, it's people have to remember that about kids. They're not the finished product at 8. And even in the sense of, I don't mean like that they're the best player, and people can very quickly just go, he isn't, little Morgan has no interest or whatever it is. In 6 months' time, that kid could be a completely different kid. Like, that's a mad thing I've only noticed in the last kind of couple of years, how much kids can change at that age.
100%. So a big common problem with like 7-side football and 5-side football is that people just box players in straight away. Like, he's not going to be good enough for Premier Football. He's not going to be good enough for the so-called A team. What are the other common problems with 7-side football, and how should you think we should address them?
Do you mean from, when I'm thinking about it there, do you mean from like common problems that coaches fall into, or that you're trying to coach with the kids, and common kind of issues that you're trying to coach across?
I would say more so along the lines of, this is us speaking to an audience that is community club focused, and these are the issues that I've seen about best practices. So one of them for me would be that there's too much focus on tactical
100%
tactical coaching. So what's their shape in defense, what's their shape in transition, what's their shape in attacking, and they're neglecting the serious need for technical development. So even if we were talking about there in the younger academies, that it's not a focus on dribbling, passing, turning, it's all just like small-sided games and exposure to games. And then I think then from 5-a-side to 9-a-side, or from 5-a-side to 7 to 9-a-side, it should be about receiving the ball in different areas. It should be 1v1 games still, but with when you're playing back to goal for 4 weeks and talking about the importance of using your arm, using feints, for example. So although the kids were doing it as 4-year-olds just for the fun, now they're doing it with a purpose and some education and some method behind the madness. And I think rather than focusing on tactics, there should be a curriculum based on giving a base understanding of the 4 functions of football. So attacking, transition to defend, defending, then transition to attack. Not really tactically, like where and when you should be here and there, but a good understanding of those 4 functions.
Yeah, and a good one I think is, I think the biggest trap coaches fall into, and I fell into when I started out, is reactionary coaching. So it's like, go out at the weekend, we conceded 2 corners, that's it, corners all week, and then the team you go out and play are tiny and you don't concede any corners and nobody learns anything. So I think you got to stick to your plan. So it doesn't need to be this huge intricate thing. It can be 6 weeks of we're going to work on, and don't underestimate how much time it takes kids to learn things properly. So say you do 6 weeks or 8 weeks on playing through the thirds or building through the thirds, just stick to that. No matter what happens, stick to that. Games are irrelevant. You're working on that, and you're getting your success and your joy from seeing them at the end of the 6 to 8 weeks be able to build through the thirds within those games as well. Yeah, not being too tactically heavy. I think a really good one for kids that age that people don't use enough is zoning out. I was only talking about with a coach yesterday, is zoning out a pitch. So having your flat cones and having, say, if you've 2 defenders and 1 striker here, 2 centre mids and 2 centre mids in the middle zone, and then 2 defenders and a striker in the other one, and they're playing against each other. Because the biggest issue I think with kids at that age is closing space, and they don't have the awareness of space. So you're trying to encourage them to keep the pitch big and trust that their teammates will get the ball.
Your pitch, so you're doing a training game, you split your pitch into thirds, so like defensive, midfield, front 3.
I'd have, I could have like 2 mini goals this end, 2 mini goals this end. Then I'd have one zone here with 2 blue defenders, 1 white striker in here, 2 blue centre mids, 2 white centre mids. If you've got a neutral player, and for the first couple of weeks, even better, because they're going to have more success. So say a yellow neutral in there, and then the other zone, you would have 2 white defenders, 1 blue striker, and you're trying to get them, they can't step out through the zone. So the defenders have to pass into the middle zone. The middle zone have to pass in to the striker, and then 1 middle can go in and join the striker and try help play.
I'd actually go against you for that. I think
don't
they're-
like it?
I hate those exercises unless you have floaters, because I think players gravitate towards the lines and they just stay in a flat line all the time. That's my experience
Oh,
with
they
it.
come to war. Yeah.
Yeah, they used to freak me out.
Floaters
those
are
games.
key because you want them
Aren't
to have,
they?
you
I think
want them
you-
to have success.
Yeah, I think you have to have
be,
floaters.
Yeah, it can't be 2-2-1 against a 2-2-1 because
100%.
you're never going to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, when you do get there, so say you were doing that for 6 weeks, the 6th week you might do that. You might have no floaters and do it, but definitely start out have your floaters. I like as well. Sometimes they don't have to be in the middle. I do floaters on the outside, so they'd be like neutral fullbacks.
Yeah.
So when they're building, then you'd have your two center backs, and then the two neutrals would act like fullbacks. And say the only rule is that maybe the center back can't pass directly to the fullback, and so you're encouraging your center mids to be really brave, get on the ball, and find the free man as you go through. But it just kind of gives kids that little bit more awareness of space and to hold their space as they go. But that's after, if I was doing that, that would be after lots of kind of passing patterns, smaller rondos. And then the biggest thing is kids are, the only thing consistent about them is how inconsistent they are. So you could look like prime Barcelona with your under sevens one week, and they could come down the next week, and you could ask them, okay, well, you say, okay, we're working on building through the thirds, and they go, I've never heard about that in my life. Who are you? Like they will every single week. You'll have to reiterate points that you've made and just get used to the fact that it's not going to be, it's not this thing, it's not linear or binary where it's just it clicks and they've got it. It's not going to work. You're going to have to do weeks and weeks and weeks of it. And then at the end of, say, 8 weeks, that's where you'll see the progress. It won't be week to week.
I actually seen a really interesting social media post, which is exactly on the topic. It's modern soccer coach Gary Kareem put it up, and it was American basketball player jumps over a guy and dunks in the Olympics. Vince Carter, was it? But anyway, he does it, and he's getting into it after the game, and he doesn't realize he did it. Like, they're like, oh, like, what? How do you feel jumping off thing? He goes, I didn't even realize I'd done that until I was like, everyone's celebrating. I thought I was just far away from the hoop, jump and dunked it. It's like he's a high level basketball player. Didn't even remember doing that in a game. And then sometimes we expect 10-year-olds to remember something we said last week.
Yeah.
Or to recall something from a game. Like, you might come in at half time and go, little Jimmy, do you remember you were running through on goal and Gary was to your right side? And they're like, yeah. They definitely don't remember it. They don't recall it. Like, it's so hard to like Shane said, they could have been brilliant at this thing last week. And then you come up and you ask 3 of them what they were doing, and they're kind of looking at you like this is the first time they've heard of a concept. So you've got to, repetition is key. Like you said, stick to a block of training. If you're doing like that, I typically operate in 4 to 6 week blocks, 8, whatever way you want to do it. If you do your 4 to 6 weeks on it could get to a really good level and you're like, grand, happy enough, and you move on to something else. Remember what you were working on in another 4 weeks time, that first block could go back down again. You might need to revisit it or move. Like there's so much with that. But the worst thing you could do is session hop. We're defending corners this week because we conceded, and then our Thursday session we're doing attacking around their goal, and then next week we're playing out from, like, you should teach. Again, we always talk about principles, and your principles are key. Where, like, one I use sometimes is just find the free man, because that is applicable if your keeper has the ball or if your centre forward has the ball, because the free player is generally going to be the one with space, or little things like that. And that, if the kids have that mentality all the time, it doesn't matter what shape you play. It doesn't, like, the movements and all, they'll move to become the free man wherever they are, or they'll try pass to the free man. And that way you're teaching them concepts that are very simple and basic, so that they apply across the board to systems, to sessions. Like, if it's a 4v2 rondo, I know I have 2 free players. If it's a 3v2 attacking game, I have 1 free player. So you're constantly trying to reiterate that. And like Shane said, you need to do blocks. Blocks are so important, and it's the hardest thing as a coach when you see something not working.
So tough.
And you're like, pre-season, like the level that we're coaching at now, like, I have pre-seasons sessions where you're like, geez, I can't wait to do the defend the block, because that's freaking me out with some of the stuff they're doing. But you've just got to, no, I'm doing an attacking block, because that's just the way we do it anyway. But stick to your block. It is probably my best advice, as much as you can.
And a small practical one for me as well, as a common issue for coaches, is time. You probably got an hour slot in a 6. So I would, depend on the age, if they're a little bit older, I got bands. I can get bands pretty cheap. Get them up 15 minutes early, do a bit of bands, and you're going in and you're getting an hour of football, so you're not losing your first 10 minutes on the Astro. Like, nothing does my head in more than you see a team come on the Astro and first thing they start doing is running laps around the Astro, and you're like, well, you only get an hour on this pitch. We need to get the ball at their feet and get working. So get them up 10 minutes early. If there's space to do a little kind of dynamic warm up outside, brilliant. If you want to get bands, brilliant. Whatever it is, but just maximize that time on the pitch, because it's so important. Don't waste it. Don't waste football training not playing football.
This is another one, and I actually need to get better at it. where kids put their water bottle. If you come in the door, where there, and that's where the session's the gate, grand, they all put their stuff there. You might do the warm up there, but then you might move, if you have big space, and you might move 30 or 40 yards away. Every time they walk back to get a drink, you're wasting time. So, yeah, like one thing I've taught before, I think we've done this in the academy when we were there in Minute, is let's say we had the 4 stations, there's a drink station in the middle, like a circle of cones, and actually use cones to lay it out. Everyone puts their drink in there, grand, go to your station, and you bounce in, bounce out, and you're not wasting time. That's if you really want to be on it. I actually need to stay back on that kind of stuff, because you can honestly, you could lose 3 or 4 minutes per movement between exercise. It's really, really a waste of time. And like Shane said, if you have an hour and you do 3 different exercises, you're talking 10 minutes, or your session's already gone from walking between things and all. So that's being me, maybe being a bit nitpicky with it, but it's just a clever way to get extra minutes, you know?
Yeah. Just when I was wrapping up there, I think, so from 5-a-side, 7-a-side, 9-a-side, I think the main focus should be on, let's say, ball manipulation, more detailed 1v1 play, more detailed, let's say, 3v3 play, where you're not really talking about tactics, you're more so talking about principles. That's a good summary, is it? As well as that, in terms of, let's say, playing styles and responsibilities, do you think that positional play becomes relatively important at 9-a-side? Like, in the sense that, let's say you're playing a 2-3-1 or a 3-4-1, do you give players opportunities to play in other positions? Because 9-a-side football does have league positions and grading as well.
I'd be very much of the opinion they should play across positions.
Yeah, definitely. 9-a-side I played, which isn't probably the best formation in 9-a-side to try win, but for me, when you're looking at them when they're making the jump to 11-a-side, probably has the most applicable similar positions. When they go 11, I'd have 2 centre backs, 2 kind of wing backs almost, 3 centre midfielders and 1 striker, because then at least you're getting the spine of the team when they move to 11-a-side are used to playing in that position, and then they'd all play across all the positions. But they're starting to specialise a little bit, but you just never know who's going to develop where. So yeah, I'd 100% play them across it, and then just think about the whole time you're thinking about their development. So how does this then apply as they step on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Particularly in community football, like definitely play them across positions.
Do you talk about like playing out from the back in a back 2 at 9-a-side?
Would I?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Like, would you coach a phase of play with a 9-a-side team? I used to do it.
I wouldn't call
to the core. Like,
I wouldn't go like play to him, step here, always play to him. I would do sessions. I would just do like playing out from the back. Like, I would maybe have them going right centre half, or keeper play the centre half, and I would talk about different movements they could do in midfield, maybe like that to rotate and create passing lanes, like Shane said. I wouldn't coach a pattern of play like centre half, step, these 2 centimetres, always do this movement, play to him, bounce to fullback. I think I talked about that before on the podcast. That's how I would have used to coach, but now I would be very much I'd still put them in that scenario where they're playing out against a press, for example, or I know they've engaged retreat zones and all that stuff, but I'd put them in that session, but I wouldn't be stopping it and going full walkthroughs of every single of every pattern. I would be trying to show movements that create 3 or 4 options. So like if there's a certain movement that frees up, let's say the centre half has it, and you have a certain rotation that frees up 2 of the centre mids in Shane's system, let's say, and the full back or wing back, and then the centre half has a decision to make. It never should be centre half steps in, always play to him, always bounce it to him, and we're out, because you get caught out with that eventually.
And I think you can pull that back so much as well. Like, you can talk about, like, say if you were doing basically like a large rondo with say 14 players, if you've got a neutral on the end, 2 neutrals in here, and then that leaves you 5v5. Like, you can encourage them as they're building up that rondo. The man on the end line is like a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
You get 2 people to drop wide. They're like centre backs. Now you're going to have an overload midfield of your midfielders. So what you want, width and depth, get wide, 1 show for the ball, 1 go high. And then, like you said, coach that. I drop in for the ball, say I'm in the 6. I have a look behind me. There's nothing on. When I move out, can you encourage that player to play through, who'd be like a striker? So even without putting so much, and that's just in the rondo where they don't even realise they're doing it. And then you start introducing that slowly. You go, now, could you see how this relates to the pitch? And then when we step them onto the pitch, you're not going exactly like that. You're not prescribing. I want you to play him. He goes that. You're going. So do you remember what we just did in that kind of smaller side of the game? It's the exact same thing. The pitch is just a little bit bigger.
Because that's when we would have been guilty when we started coaching, for example, at 13th nationally. We were very like prescriptive in patterns. It's great when it works, but then all of a sudden one of their centre mid stands somewhere, and you're like, right, well now we can't do that. So you need to have the player on the ball should always have multiple options. And again, whatever your philosophy is, maybe you don't think they should play out from that, but maybe some of the options should be 3 different types of runs, whatever your philosophy is. But the player on the ball should not look up and go, well, Coach Gary said I have to play that ball, so I'm always playing that. Because then they're not making a decision. You're just prescribing, as the word. You're just prescribing them what they should do.
Yeah, and I think so on the academy side, it was very much like 2v2s, 3v3s would be the max. In 9-a-side football, you're looking at like 3v3 games, 5v5 games, floaters and neutrals used for rotations. With a big function on giving a good understanding of the 4 functions of football from 7 to 9-a-side. Nothing too major tactically, but just a good understanding of what a transition is, what attacking is, what defending is. And in terms of the hour session itself, it's typically trying to get an efficient warm-up in beforehand if possible, so using the likes of bands. And then a good tip that I used to have as well was, if you were limited of time and space, is that you give the kids responsibility for their warm-up. So you do let's say if you have a skill of the month, so let's say you're working on like a drag back, for example, that the kids can set up their lanes. They can get straight into it with a touch forward, a drag back to the lane, and they pass to the next player. It can be something as easy as that. At least they're getting touches on the ball. They already know what the skill is. They're just doing the repetitions of it. And then as that's happening, you're being able to set up your session. And I think like that's 90% of coaching. It's 95% of what we do here. So, I mean, I think really on that, we can probably call it a day.
Yeah. Hope people got some useful tips. It was good to have Shane on the podcast. I know it was very serious for a while, but
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
yeah, you and Foxy giving out about how serious it is. Considering we're spoofers off camera. But no, it was good. Hopefully people got value from it, and let us know if you want Shane to be back on, because he's the poshest person who's ever been on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'll take that. That's okay.
Good have
You always say that like it's an insult. It's like,
Yeah, true. He actually owes us a fine, by the way. He didn't
I'm
show
not
up to
do-
a staff day out. So Doyler, if you're watching this, you pick a dance
I will
from.
do the dance, Doyle. Send me the dance. I'll do that. I
he
can't
said
make
it
it
on
anyway. I
camera.
can't make
He
it
said
anyway.
it
I
on
will do the
camera.
dance. I will do the
Morgan's
dance.
lovely.
Clip that.
I will do it.
Clip that.
I look, Dave Doyle. I will do the dance. The dance can't go public. That's the only. That's the only thing.
I'd be,
It stays in Slack.
I don't know.
Morgan-
There's some leaks in that Slack. 100%.
Who would be the leak?
Well, for those that know, Slack is an internal
Paddy Elliott
communications
would be
tool.
the leak. Paddy Elliott 100% would tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
Right, goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.